In the shadow of the Austrian Alps stands a manor older than memory. A family moved in chasing a new life. But the walls were not empty. Something watched them, waiting, and once awakened, it refused to let go. Crawling from every corner of the world, come the stories that should never be told. Creepy stories from around the world. If you enjoy this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. It truly helps us make more of this type of content. Austria today is a land of paradoxes. Its cities pulse with tourists and modern life. Trams rattling across cobbled streets, neon spilling from cafes and bars, glass offices climbing above squares that still echo Mozart. Yet only a short drive away, villages seem immune to change. Church bells toll morning and evening, their notes drifting over mist-draped fields. Wooden shutters bang in mountain winds. Children play in the same squares their great-grandparents once did. It is a place where modernity and antiquity live side by side, never quite touching, as though one could step between centuries by simply walking from city to village. James Mallory, 35 years old and weary from scraping by in Manchester, found himself in this blend of past and present, barely believing his luck. He had worked in information security for years, an unglamorous career of late nights, endless updates, and poor pay. His old company had treated him as expendable, ready to replace him with younger graduates. But fate had offered a chance. A firm headquartered in Salzburg wanted him as a specialist, and they were willing to pay. The salary was unlike anything he had ever seen. For the first time in his life, James could dream, not merely of paying bills, but of thriving. Clara, his wife, could live without constant worry. Thomas, their 17-year-old son, could think of university without debt. Amelia, their 15-year-old daughter, could grow up with possibility instead of limits. The Mallorys traded gray Manchester rain for Austrian sunlight. And with the new job came something James had never dared imagine: property. Not just any property, but a manor house 2 centuries old, standing in solemn grandeur among the trees outside Salzburg. The manor had history woven into its stones. Built in 1824, it had stood through empires, wars, famine, and prosperity alike. When James first laid eyes on it, framed by ivy and crowned with a dark slate roof, his heart swelled with pride. For once in his life, he felt he had truly arrived. But not all histories stay buried. Some linger, some wait. The manor was vast. Its halls echoed with footsteps, staircases curled into shadowed upper floors, and fireplaces towered over them. Clara filled the empty rooms with their modest furniture, laughing nervously at how small their sofa looked in the drawing room, how lost the dining table seemed beneath the chandelier. James drove into Salzburg each morning, his route winding past meadows and cattle, mountains rising like jagged gods in the distance. He parked beneath the shadows of modern office towers that stood shoulder to shoulder with Baroque facades, and he worked long hours but returned smiling, no longer beaten down but filled with purpose. For the children, the manor was an adventure. Thomas explored the attics with a flashlight, finding moth-eaten coats and a leather-bound journal filled with spidery German. Amelia claimed the gardens, overgrown but enchanting, sketching mossy fountains and hedges grown wild. She told her brother she sometimes thought she heard laughter in the wind there, children long gone. At night, they gathered in the dining room, their voices carrying into the rafters. Clara tried Austrian recipes, filling the air with herbs and roasted meats. Thomas teased Amelia. Amelia rolled her eyes, and James sat back, watching, feeling something he had never known before: security. But Clara sometimes paused, standing very still. She swore she heard movement above when everyone was downstairs. Once, she spun around in the kitchen, convinced someone had breathed against her neck. Only shadows greeted her. James laughed her worries away. "It's just a house. Old houses have voices." But in his heart he too felt it, a heaviness, as though the walls themselves were watching. The manor was theirs. But something else lived there too. It began with trivial disruptions. Thomas's books, left on the sofa, appeared neatly stacked upstairs. Amelia's necklace vanished, then reappeared on the garden bench. A glass went missing and was later found in the pantry. At first, Clara tried to laugh. "It's an old house," she told herself. "Things go missing." But inside she felt a cold unease. The objects never seemed simply misplaced. They were always arranged as if someone had carried them with intent. At night, James sometimes woke to find the lamp on his bedside table burning, though he remembered turning it off. He sat upright, staring at the yellow glow, listening to the silence. The house was vast, every creak and sigh magnified in the darkness. Clara muttered uneasily in her sleep, clutching her rosary. The children slept peacefully, untouched. By September, Clara whispered of shadows, too tall, too thin, slipping at the edges of her vision. She once froze at the kitchen sink, certain she felt warm breath graze her cheek. When she turned, only the faint clink of a glass settling on the counter broke the silence. James dismissed her worries, but caught himself pausing in the halls, too, staring into corners longer than he should. The silence of the manor had begun to feel deliberate. The children remained untouched, teasing their parents gently, but Clara's eyes had grown tired and watchful. She moved through the house as if expecting something to step out from behind the next door. The unease had taken root. The disturbances grew bolder. The chandelier in the dining room swayed violently, its crystals rattling though the windows were sealed. Doors slammed upstairs when all four sat together in the lounge. At night came 3 knocks, always 3, echoing through the walls like a signal, measured and patient, as though the house itself was answering a question only it could hear. James began to glimpse him. At first, shadows and mirrors, gone when he turned. Then clearer, a tall figure, gaunt, hollow-eyed, dressed from another century. Once, James froze as he saw the man at the end of a corridor, standing utterly still, his gaze fixed on him. When James blinked, the hallway was empty, but his skin crawled with the certainty that he had been watched. Clara's health faltered. Her hands trembled constantly, her complexion drained. She woke screaming at night, swearing someone had stood at the foot of her bed. The air in their room grew heavy, so oppressive that James found it hard to breathe. The walls seemed to press closer in the dark. James searched the house with his flashlight, each night more desperate. The beam slid over empty chairs, over dust and corners. But the silence felt alive, as though something just beyond sight was waiting for him to lower the light. Clara begged for help from the church. 2 local priests came, their faces grave as they sprinkled holy water, whispered prayers, and pressed crucifixes to doorframes. But the air did not shift. The silence remained, deeper than before, as if mocking them. When the priests left, they told the family gently that the house was ordinary. "Old timbers creak," one said. Clara wept. James clenched his fists. He could not explain away the man's eyes. It no longer felt as though the house was merely haunted. The presence had fixed itself upon them. By winter, dread filled every room. James, once steady, now looked hollow-eyed. He muttered to himself, scribbling notes on scraps of paper, lists of knocks, half-sketched drawings of a gaunt figure. He rarely ate. Clara moved like a shadow, clutching her rosary until her knuckles whitened, whispering prayers even at the breakfast table. The cruelty of the haunting sharpened. James woke choking, clawing at his throat. Clara collapsed in the kitchen, insisting something had shoved her. A mirror in their bedroom cracked in a single line across the glass while no one touched it. The atmosphere grew so heavy that even the children, untouched, felt it. Thomas complained of headaches. Amelia admitted she sometimes woke certain that someone was staring at her through the darkness. Meals were silent. Laughter was gone. The house felt colder, even with fires burning. The air pressed down thick and stale, carrying a scent of dust and stone. One night, James snapped. He stormed the halls, his flashlight beam shaking as he roared into the shadows. "Show yourself! Enough hiding! If you want us, come and take me!" The chandelier shook violently. Doors slammed shut one by one like gunshots. Clara screamed, collapsing onto the floor with her hands clamped over her ears. Amelia clung to Thomas, sobbing, as James dropped to his knees, trembling and incoherent. The silence that followed felt worse than the chaos, and Amelia, hands shaking, called the police. The officers arrived just past midnight, their blue lights casting restless shadows across the old stone walls. Inspector Marcus Leitner led the way inside, a broad-shouldered man with a trimmed beard and the steady voice of someone who had seen too much domestic chaos in his career. His younger partner, Constable Eva Grun, carried the wariness of a long winter shift in her eyes. They found James Mallory pacing the hallway, shouting at nothing, his hair damp with sweat, his eyes wild. "You don't see him?" he barked at Leitner, pointing into the dark corner by the stairs. "He's standing there watching us." The beam of Leitner's flashlight cut across the empty plaster. He exchanged a look with Grun, who carefully noted James's tremor, the way his hands shook as he spoke. Clara sat curled on the floor near the dining room, her rosary tangled in her fingers, whispering prayers that broke into sobs. Amelia clung to Thomas, both children pale, wide-eyed, frozen. Leitner crouched beside the boy. "Has your father been drinking? Taking medication?" His tone was kind but skeptical. Thomas shook his head furiously. "No, he's not like this. He's never been like this." His voice cracked, but the inspector only patted his shoulder and rose again. Within an hour, Dr. Andreas Huber arrived, an on-call physician from the nearest clinic, his overcoat half-buttoned, his breath steaming in the cold air. He checked James's pulse, examined Clara, then shook his head gravely. "Stress reaction," Huber declared. "Possibly a shared psychosis. These old houses, the move, the strain of relocation, it can break fragile minds. The children seem unaffected, which is good, but the parents need rest, medical supervision." His words felt like dismissal, like a wall slamming shut. Clara clutched at his sleeve, begging him to listen. "It's not us," she cried. "There's someone here. Please don't leave us." But the doctor only freed himself gently, writing out a prescription. "Sedatives, sleep, that will help." James fought when the ambulance crew arrived. "You can't leave them here alone," he roared, thrashing against the straps as they sedated him. "He'll come for them. Don't you see him?" His words dissolved into slurred murmurs as the injection took hold. Clara was calmer, though no less broken. She was given medication for her nerves, as Dr. Huber called it. Eva Grun pressed a small paper bag of pills into her hand, speaking softly, like a mother to a frightened child. "Take these. Sleep. That's all it is." The neighbors had gathered by then, drawn by the lights and sirens. They huddled at their gates in nightclothes, muttering among themselves. Frau Ebner, an elderly widow from across the lane, whispered to anyone who would listen, "I told you that house is cursed. Nothing good has come from it since the war." Her words carried, picked up by others, spreading like frost. By the time the police cars pulled away, the Mallory's reputation was set. The English family, already odd, now branded unstable. But not everyone dismissed it. Leitner lingered at the gate, watching the house as its windows glared back dark and empty. "Strange," he muttered to Grun. "Too strange." He didn't say more, but later in his report, he added one unusual line. "Family claims persistent presence, events unexplained." It was enough. Through channels the Mallorys could never have guessed, the note found its way to Vienna, and from Vienna to Rome. The Vatican had seen such reports before. Families broken by something priests failed to sense, something old and malicious that left only ruin behind. And so 2 figures were dispatched to Salzburg, quietly, without ceremony. Father Matteo Ricci, weary, scarred, his faith tested countless times. Sister Helena Kruger, her visions both a gift and a burden. They came without announcement. To the neighbors, they were strangers. To Thomas and Amelia, they would soon feel like the only adults who truly believed them. To Clara, they were her last fragile thread of hope. To James, confined in a sterile white hospital bed, they were too late. Ricci dug into Salzburg's archives while Helena prayed in the Manor's rooms. The truth emerged. The house had once belonged to Viktor Rauch, a 19th-century nobleman remembered with dread. He ruled with cruelty. Servants feared him. His wife withered under his hand. His son fled. His daughter died young. Despair, many whispered. Viktor himself died alone, slumped in the great hall, his face twisted in rage. No mourners came, but he remained. Helena's visions revealed him. Skeletal, towering, his eyes voids, his rage unspent. She felt his hunger to dominate, his fury at losing control. He had chosen James and Clara because they were parents. Breaking them let him relive his power. He spared Thomas and Amelia not from mercy, but from guilt. They were reminders of the family he had destroyed. "Viktor Rauch lingers still," Ricci told Clara, "and he has chosen you." Somewhere deep in the walls, 3 sharp knocks answered. As the last light bled from the sky, the house seemed to lean closer, listening, waiting for what was to come. Ricci laid out a crucifix, Bible, holy water, candles. Helena placed her rosary beside them. Clara clutched hers until her palms bled. Thomas and Amelia stood silent. The prayers began. Latin echoed through the hall. Candles flickered, flames bending sideways though no draft stirred. Then the bulbs overhead burst, glass raining down. The chandelier swung, doors slammed upstairs, and he came. Viktor Rauch appeared in the doorway, tall, skeletal, eyes black pits, mouth twisted in hate. With each step, the air dropped colder until their breath smoked. Richie thundered, "Exorcizo te, omnis spiritus immunde!" Viktor screamed, shattering windows. Shadows writhed on the walls. Helena cried out, "Holy Mary, shield this family!" The spirit lunged. Richie raised the crucifix, forcing him back. The manor shook. Portraits crashed. The pounding came, 3 knocks, everywhere at once. Clara collapsed, still praying through her sobs. For a moment, Victor's gaze fixed on the children. His voice slid across the air, "My children, I failed you." Then rage consumed him. Helena lifted her rosary. "In Christ's name, leave this place." The candles flared, smoke split from Victor's form. At midnight, the house erupted. The chandelier tore from the ceiling. Victor's scream rose to a shriek, then ended. Silence. The cold ebbed. The spirit was gone. Richie lowered the crucifix, hands trembling. Helena wept. Clara lay faint, lips moving in prayer. The children clung together. For the first time in months, the manor was still. But silence is not peace. Clara awoke whispering prayers, her eyes glassy. She drifted through days, staring from windows as though expecting someone. James never returned. In the asylum, he muttered endlessly of eyes in the dark, of 3 knocks that never ceased. Sometimes he did not know his children. Thomas, only 17, became the head of the house. He cooked, paid bills, carried burdens far too heavy. Amelia tried to soften him, filling rooms with music, coaxing smiles, though she too sometimes sat staring into corners. They visited their father. He reached for their hands, whispering, "Don't let him in, always 3. Clara went once and never again. Neighbors whispered of curses. Some urged the manor be torn down. Most avoided the road entirely, crossing themselves when they passed. The children grew up in silence, scarred. The spirit was gone, but memory remained. Sometimes at night, Thomas swore he heard footsteps in the upstairs hall. Amelia said it was only the wind, but she too pulled her blankets tighter, because silence does not always mean peace. The Austrian manor stands to this day, ivy climbing higher with each passing year. Viktor Rauch is gone. His shadow faded, but the scars he carved into the living remain. Because when the dead refuse to rest, it is not the house that is cursed. It is the family left behind. If you enjoy this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. It truly helps us make more of this type of content.